Pat Wetzel. Oh my goodness, what a great conversation with Pat. Just inspiring. Bump in the Road, the name of her book, her podcast. My goodness, what she went through, her major bumps. She got cancer, 6 years, fought it. She was diagnosed with another illness before the cancer that had to remove her from the workforce. She got some IP stolen for a platform. I mean, just hit after hit, force, and she decides to completely break free. She goes on, I mean, she was a bond trader in the 80s, high profile, went to Wharton, incredibly disciplined woman, and broke free from it all, started taking up high performance flying, and turned everything around. She now has a podcast where she talks to people that have bumps in the road and what they did to turn it around. She blogged. Her book is all about many of her guests on it, but just a fascinating discussion, gives you inspiration, gives me certainly inspiration talking to her and what she did to turn it around and what she continues to do. With crisis, only two things can happen. We can either break down or break through. Thanks for listening. Hi, I'm Joey Pinz. People ask me, how did I lose 130 pounds? The quick answer is always discipline. I started my business, wasn't paying attention to my health, was eating too much, drinking too much sweets. My daughter was born. Next thing I know, I'm pre-diabetic, I have hypertension. I knew something had to change. Discipline. I, like many of you, have faced many challenges in your career, in your family, in your life, in your faith. How did you attack them? How did you approach them? How did you solve them, hopefully? It all had to have some degree of discipline. I'm also asked, how did you found and start a tech business that lasted over 25 years? Discipline. I was committed to it, enjoyed technology, didn't enjoy some aspects of it, but knew it was necessary. Discipline. Our podcast mission, how do we use discipline to better ourselves and society? Join me, please, as I talk to interesting people and discuss how they use discipline in their family and their passion and their careers and how it helped them. Our podcast vision, growth through learning from others. Joey Pinz Disciple Conversations. It'll be light and serious. Join us, please. Thank you for consideration. Pat Wetzel, thank you so much. Very, very excited to talk to you. Very excited. What should we do when we receive a bump in the road?
Panic.
Ha!
The problem is when you hit a significant bump, you don't know what to do. Your whole world is turned upside down. You're just in a quandary. And I think what you need to do most of all is try to be calm and understand this will pass. Ask what the lesson is. There's always a lesson in a significant bump. And if you can take away that lesson, it will shift your life. And I would also say energy. Have the energy to just take one step. It doesn't matter if it's the wrong, quote unquote wrong step. There are no wrong steps. But if you go off on a tangent, it's okay. You'll come in time, you'll come back. But the key is not to stay mired in that nasty place where you find yourself. The key is to get moving.
Yeah, I mean, if you just, like you say, mire is the perfect term for it, isn't it? Just kind of sit there and kind of wallow.
I call it mired in the muck.
You have an incredibly, I'm going to say, moving story. Your backstory. I guess we'll start with you had to leave the workforce. You became ill.
Yeah, I call that part of my story crash and burn. I was working in international finance in the bond market actually in the 80s. Fantastic place to be as a young person, really learning about markets. And I was feeling very tired. I was dropping things. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't swallow. I was losing weight. And I thought it was just, the stress of ridiculous hours.
Mm.
But it wasn't. It turned out to be a very rare neurologic disease that sent my life spinning off on a tangent I never expected.
You at the time you were in Connecticut, where I'm from, and you went to Yale, and they diagnosed you.
Yeah, there was a gentleman, Andy Packner, who specialized in myasthenia gravis, which was the name of this disease. I mean, only at Yale would you find somebody who
Mm,
specializes in something this obscure, and he was terrific. But for me, it was several years of first surgery. They remove your thymus because they think it has something to do with the disease, at least back
mm.
then. And then you go on all these drugs, and you go on drugs to counteract the drugs. So it's a big, medical funhouse. You never really know where you stand with it all.
The good news is that you're better.
Yeah, I feel great. I get a little tired now and then, but I think I'm of an age where I am allowed to get a little tired now and then.
Yes,
And
as
I've
we all do.
simply integrated a 20-minute nap into my schedule some days.
Yeah, nothing wrong with that. I do the same thing, Pat. And then the next is not you don't really call it a bump, but I do wanna talk about it, how you were gonna create a platform and you've got your IP stolen.
Yeah, that was just a terrible betrayal. I'd gone down to Silicon Valley to raise money, and the platform really was about keeping people connected through long-term illness, and had some very unique factors to it. Nobody's done anything like it since. I had some potential interest in Silicon Valley, but I needed to do a beta platform to demonstrate the numbers and really show that it could work. So I hired a company to do that, and we signed contracts, and I waited, and I waited. Nothing. They wouldn't respond to my emails, to my phone calls. I finally got a very expensive lawyer involved who informed me that they had registered all my intellectual property with the US Patent Office as their own, that it would take at least 3 years, cost in increments of $500,000, and there was no guaranteed outcome to a lawsuit of this sort.
Wow.
Yeah. This was after 6 years of dealing with cancer. So at that point, I had just had it. I had totally had it. I just couldn't deal with one more thing. And I realized something was missing from my life, but I didn't know what.
Mm,
And I couldn't put my finger on it. I don't know I was conscious enough to put my finger on it. But I decided that I was just going to sell my house, my beautiful house, put everything in storage, and just go travel for a while.
mm,
And I did. And in doing that, I wrote a blog, Cancer Road Trip. It's still up, but it's not active. And in traveling and writing, I think I really came back to who I was meant to be. I
mm.
love to travel. I love the present moment intensity of being on the road. But most of all, when I was a kid, everyone thought I would write. And I put that aside for more practical route and whatnot. But I found as I started writing, I won awards and built an audience and I really enjoyed it. So that eventually evolved, another bump in the road, but evolved into the podcast now, Bump in the Road. And my first book, which just came out, and I'm working on another book now on strong women. And it's all based on the people from my podcast.
Absolutely incredible. Going back to the issue, I mean, you sign contracts and they just blatantly stole the idea. Does this happen often? Am I naive to think that I didn't think things like this happen, especially here. You hear about it
Oh,
overseas where they had different IP laws, but I didn't realize it's so blatant here.
apparently it is. I was told that this happens all the time, and that's why you can't really predict an outcome. It takes years to work its way through court. It's very expensive. I wasn't in a position to fund something like that, either financially or emotionally. I mean,
Right.
emotionally, it was just devastating.
So you have to protect yourself even before going into a contractual agreement with people that you were hoping were gonna protect you. It's
Oh, to give you
terrible.
an idea, one guy sat on the board of 2 publicly traded companies. I'd actually been to Thanksgiving at one of their houses. I mean, this was a significant betrayal, and all I
Wow.
can say is I actually feel sorry for people who live like that. My perspective on it is they can only steal, I can create,
Hmm.
and that's what I did.
Well, that's profound, Pat. They can steal, but they can't stop you from creating.
And now I structure things differently. I have a much smaller vision of what I wanna do in the world, but it's much more under my control to the extent we
Mm,
control anything,
mm.
and that's okay. I'm actually very happy with it.
So now we enter Whiskey Oscar.
The love of my life.
Yes.
Whiskey Oscar is, she's still around, a 15-meter sailplane that was built for a gentleman named Carl Streetick to fly in the worlds. Carl's a world-famous pilot. She's a beautiful airplane. Now, to give you a sense of what these sailplanes are like, they have long, thin, white fiberglass wings that are just stunning. They just reflect the light around them. And the essence of soaring, it's a sport, it's an aviation sport, is that you take a toe into the air, you release maybe around, 2,000 feet or so, and then you have to go and fly a task with no engine. So it's a matter of navigating the invisible energy and forces of the air.
Mm,
And there was a book written, Silence on the Wind. Baron Hilton, who founded the Hilton hotel chains, was very involved in soaring, wrote a foreword to it. And in the foreword, he wrote that um, soaring is just such a unique sport. And he said it's fueled only by the mind of the pilot.
mm.
I love that phrase because that is what it comes down to. Can you find these invisible sources of lift? Can you climb? Can you run far with that altitude? And it's really an incredible metaphor for life.
It certainly is. Now, I got my private pilot about 15 years ago. So I flew I owned an Archer. So this is just single engine. And, during training, of course, my instructor would turn the engine off and,
Mhm.
panic occurs,
Oh,
right?
that's when it gets fun.
And you learn that, don't you? Yeah, because now it just turns into a heavy glider. But we had at the airport there in Connecticut, we had some gliders there too, and I was always very envious of that. I mean, just kind of the quietness up there because I've got headphones on. Does it have any electricity at all? The glider?
Oh, sure, and you have lots
Yeah.
of aviation instruments. You have a variometer, you have your
Ah,
altimeter, things like that, so you have a radio, but the thing that's really cool is when you turn it all off. And you just go fly. And the thing that people don't realize about this, you don't go up and fly around the airport. You
right.
go up and you fly far. I mean, a
Yes.
very daring pilot, more daring than me, can go from Minden, Nevada, which is roughly about midway at Lake Tahoe, down to the Mojave and back on a really good day.
Wow.
That's extraordinary. And just
Wow.
and it's just the view from above. I mean, I've been over 30,000 feet, that's kinda cool.
Whoa.
But to run down a mountain ridge at over 100 miles an hour is
Mm,
just amazing, it's so beautiful. You could watch the wild, horses, the sheep sometimes up in the mountains, the snow on top of the peaks. It's just, it's an experience, I think, that gives you an amazing amount of awe and appreciation for nature, and to a
mm,
large extent puts you in your place. You're a mere human
mm,
in this
mm.
vast, amazing playground.
Dust in the wind. At 30,000 though, Pat, there's compression. You need oxygen.
Yes, well, we fly in oxygen out west at least, almost all the time.
I see.
Uh, they say put it on around 10,000, 12,000
Right.
feet. Personally put it on at 10. I think 12,000 is where you're supposed to put it on, and, just leave it on until I land because it doesn't hurt to have a little bit of extra oxygen. Back
Exactly.
east, you don't run into that as much because you're not flying at such altitude. But when you
Right.
fly wave, which is what you're fly to those relatively extreme altitudes, um, you have compressed oxygen in that case, and you dress very warmly because it's
Mm,
about negative 50 degrees
right.
Fahrenheit.
It's cold up there. Yeah. And you're looking for high wind days so you can go against it and you can, help that carry you through, correct?
Yeah, actually, what happens with wave is a weather front of some sort hits a mountain range, and that creates a growing, stable base of air that is just rising into the atmosphere.
Mm.
Now, on the other side of the stable base of air is rotor, which is very wild and erratic and not really fun to fly through. But the wave is amazing. You feel like you're sitting on your living room floor and you're just going up rapidly at, hundreds of feet a minute, if not more.
And you still do it now, Pat?
No, I sold Whiskey Oscar a few years ago. She has a new home now
Mm,
with somebody who loves her too. Um, I think that over time, my risk parameters just changed.
yeah.
And it's a sort of sport where you have to be really dedicated. You're constantly watching the weather. You have to fly a lot to be competent and safe. And particularly out west, where you're flying at high density altitudes, a lot of strong winds and things like that, you need to be on top of your game.
It's the same reason why I stopped as well. I have passengers and, if you
Yeah.
2 or 3 weeks, you don't do it, your skills become soft so the Northeast, I would fly out to Martha's Vineyard and Block Island, all throughout New England, and, yeah, you just have to stay on it. You're right, though. Your vision of risk becomes a little bit, just a little bit different. So you start to travel and you go to Tanzania. Now, when I hear travel, I think, okay, we're going to hit the Great Midwest, the national parks.
I did that too.
But you decide to go to Tanzania.
Yeah, actually, I had met a Nikon, photographer, who asked me if I wanted to go, and I said, "Oh, sure." So I ended up going with 3 professional photographers and me,
Wow.
and,
Wow.
it was just an incredible learning experience.
Describe Tanzania for us.
Wow. It was really interesting. I landed at the airport late at night. I'd been traveling about, I don't know, 30 hours or so at that point. And finally, you get through customs, everything just, backs up, and you go out into this warm night air, and a driver was waiting for me. So we got into the safari vehicle, and I was so tired. And we're driving, and you're driving sometimes, I think it was a Friday or Saturday night that I arrived, and you're just driving through dark, driving through these little villages where people are celebrating because it's the weekend. And I dozed off. And when I woke up, I was confronted with this estate in this big walled area with magnificent plants just pouring over the walls, thatched roofs, beautiful lighting. It was like I had walked back in time to the British Empire.
Huh.
So there's that aspect of Tanzania where you have these remnants of history that still live on today and are very luxurious and beautiful, but outside the walls is absolute extreme poverty. And actually, the poverty outside our walls was not as bad as it was in other parts of the country. Um, Tanzania has magnificent, beautiful parks full of wildlife. Obviously, the Serengeti is incredible.
Mm.
Kilimanjaro is there. I mean, it has a little bit of something for everybody, I think, depending on what you want to do.
Very, very cool. And how long were you there? And you blogged about it?
Yeah, a few weeks, and I learned a lot about photography. I had taken up photography in my travels. I never was interested in taking pictures really. But one day on the beach in Florida, I took some pictures of sanderlings wandering right at the edge of the water as the waves came in. And the water's this pretty blue, and the beach is just golden and glistening, and these little birds are wandering at the water's edge. And I just laid down on my stomach and I started taking some pictures. And total beginner's luck, I had no idea what I was doing. I got these pictures of these little birds wandering around with bokeh, which is a photographic term for these beautiful orbs of light in the background. And when I looked at the pictures afterwards, I thought, "Huh, this is kinda cool. Maybe there's something to this photography thing."
Mm.
And that kind of launched me off into a number of photographic forays, new cameras, new people, all sorts of adventures.
It's amazing. It's just your story, your podcast, your book, Bumps in the Road. It's amazing how you have one quote in your Instagram where it says, um, when you're with crisis, you have two things could happen. You could, break
That
down
was
or
from
break
Tama
through.
Caves. That was from one of my oh, wait, no, that was from Tom Cronin, I believe, one of my guests, on the podcast. He has a great story. All my guests have great stories.
Yes, they do.
Yeah, they're really just amazing. Tom was a bond trader, in Australia back, I'm going to say maybe late 80s or so. He's about 10 or 15 years younger than me. Anyway, he was a bond trader and just hit a wall where he couldn't do it anymore, had a severe depression. And in going through all this, he discovered meditation. And it was like magic. It's just like all the angst and all the issues he had just disappeared. So he went back to being a bond trader, which he did, I think, for another 18 years or so. And he meditated. Now, he had been a wild party animal before this.
Mm,
Sex, drugs, rock and roll, the whole 80s kind of, Wall Street thing. That was his life. And he was the biggest animal of all the animals.
mm,
And after learning to meditate, everything changed. Now he was no longer part of that group. And he started running his business differently. He started taking his clients on surfing safaris, and he would take them to the opera. So he really just remade his life with this new peace that he had. And when he retired, he did a book and a film, and his goal is to get 1 billion people to meditate.
mm. How has meditation changed your life?
Oh, totally transformed it. Meditation is magic.
Yeah.
I say that for a few reasons. I learned to meditate during a really difficult period of my life. I was going through cancer treatments, and they just kept failing. And now I'm facing a transplant, right, with 30% mortality rate, everything that goes with it. And meanwhile, next door, my neighbors from hell have put a 9,000 square foot house almost on the property line.
Yeah.
And they went from being quiet and decent neighbors to all of a sudden being loud, hundreds of thousands of dollars of cars in the driveway. I mean, just a 180-degree shift. And they started playing their stereo almost incessantly. And it was so loud that my windows would wave in and out with the bass. I mean, it was horrendous. So I'm going through this. I had to re-landscape my whole yard to just blot them out and deal with them. My yard's a mess. I go out into the backyard one night and boom, 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 the stereo's just going. And my yard's a mess and I'm facing life and death potentially. And I just look up the stars and I screamed. And I just screamed and screamed. And nobody heard me, of course, because the stereo was so loud.
Mm,
But a few weeks later, I went to the local museum. They were having, they had a class of meditation. And every week we did a different type of meditation so you could sample some different things. And I thought, I've got to do something. I mean, my life is just nuts. So I committed to transcendental meditation, meditating twice a day for 20 minutes. And I made that, it was a total commitment. I did not miss a session. But what happened was so interesting. I found this profound peace and I was able to drop into it pretty quickly. It was just wonderful. And after you've been meditating for a while, you realize that that experience of peace it's experiential.
mm.
So it's not like you can I liken it to chocolate. Let me explain meditation this way.
Okay.
If you read about chocolate, you'd read there's dark chocolate, there's milk chocolate, there's white chocolate, there's chocolate with nuts. There's a million types of chocolate, right? You could read about how the beans are grown and how chocolate is made, but you still would have no idea what chocolate was about.
Mm.
When you taste chocolate, it's an experience. And
Yes.
it's a multitude of experiences depending on what type of chocolate you have. Meditation is the exact same thing. It's an experience of quiet and peace. And it's different every
Mm,
time, and it's experiential. Now you carry this quiet and peace with you. And once you experience mental quiet, now you can start to watch your thoughts. When you can watch your thoughts, you can consciously choose how you react and what you think. That
mm,
alone is a tremendous game changer because most of us just have what they call a monkey mind. It's just busy all the time and people don't know any peace. Once you know peace, it's changes everything.
mm. It quiets you down a bit.
It quiets you down. It's interesting. I think there are a number of facets to meditation. You'll appreciate one, it's discipline.
Mm,
You have to show up and you have to do it, and it's not perfect. The second part is awareness. You become aware of your mind and you can observe your thoughts. And observation leads to choice. And then there's the experiential aspect of it. And what happens is you know that peace, that profound peace is always there. It's always there. And it becomes a part of you. So, like road rage, thing of the past. Not 100%, but, you just you come at life from a different
Mm,
perspective.
mm,
And I think for me, meditation rewired my brain. I went through, a lot of chemo and stuff, which left me almost unable to do a lot of the linear things I used to do. So I think the combination of the 2 things oriented me to be much more right-brained than I was previously, and that opens up yet another dimension of life. We live in a very left-brain society, that celebrates materialism, hierarchical success, school, degrees, all that type of thing, but it really has nothing to do with the experience of life.
mm. Pat, how do you many so just with that quote, we're either gonna, break down or break through. What made you break through? I mean, could you meditation certainly was a vehicle, but what I feel makes an extraordinary person is not only did you break through, but now you show others how to do it. You have this great podcast. You're writing books, the blogs. So you're showing everybody the story in the hopes I believe that they can break through as well. So what do you attribute that to? What do you got, Pat, that we should all have?
I don't know that I have it. I think we all do. I think for me, it is a sense that there's something more, and I'm not willing to settle with dissatisfaction. And I don't know what that something more is. As I take that step, as I said earlier, excuse me, you have to put energy into the equation. And when you start putting energy in the equation, you start opening up to new paths. And I think that's the key. You have to get out of your comfort zone. You cannot navigate these things if you want to stay in your comfort zone. And that's really scary for most people.
Unfortunately, especially when we get older, it's worse.
I don't know. I think that we can,
I guess it depends
excuse
on
me,
the person.
it does.
Yeah.
I think we can adapt a habit of change. That's
Mm.
discipline too. Drive a different way, try a different food. Don't let your life become too still, too stagnant. When I feel that I'm bored, I know it's because I'm becoming boring. And it's
Mm.
time to shake things up a little bit. And take risks. We are so risk averse in this society, in so many ways. One of my favorite descriptions of this essence of stepping outside your comfort zone comes from one of my guests, Eric Weinmayer. Eric went blind when he was 16, climbed Mount Everest, blind, 7 summits, and kayaked down the Colorado River Rapids.
Mm.
This is his story, and I tell it often because I think he just so captures the essence of this. He divides the world into 3 groups. Now the groups are fluid and we can move between them, and we've all been in each of these groups. The first group are quitters, self-evident.
Mm.
The next group are campers. They want to hang on to the status quo no matter what.
Hmm.
And it's not that they're bad or lazy people at all. We all get to be campers sometimes, but maybe they've just been slammed by life so many times that they're not willing to look out of the foxhole anymore.
Mm.
And
Mm.
then very few people are climbers. Now, no one's a
Hmm.
climber all the time. You get to sit on the couch and eat ice cream. But the point is, those climbers seem to be willing to challenge their comfort zone and challenge themselves. And we all have that within us. But when we start to challenge our comfort zone, we're challenging relationships, we're maybe challenging security, we may be challenging our identity of ourselves. Those are tough things to negotiate.
Yeah, and it's interesting how you said in those 3 groups, um, it's not that you're a climber in everything, right? You could just in
No.
some areas, right? You wanna take up a new passion, take up a new you all of a sudden photography kind of fell on your lap, right, through
Mhm.
friends, and then you find that you have a passion for it, seek those things out, and maybe you'll wanna dive in.
Absolutely. And it's interesting. I used to think, 40 to 50% of us will have a cancer diagnosis. And I
Mm,
used to think that was potentially a portal to living a more meaningful life. You get face your mortality and you start to realize, wow, why am I here? What do I want to do?
mm,
But I was wrong. I was absolutely wrong. What I found was that most people just want to go back to the status quo. They
mm.
don't want anything to change. And yet, how can I don't wanna say how can you not change through an experience like that, but an experience like that offers you an opportunity for deep reflection and change if you want it. And I think to ignore that opportunity is to ignore an opportunity for enormous personal growth.
Hmm. So, what do we say yes to and what do we say no to? It's ultimately your decision.
And it should be a conscious one,
Hmm.
not an unconscious one driven by, the unconscious subtext we all have in our lives. I think starting to learn to recognize that and decide consciously what you want to do is really important.
So you mentioned discipline. So, I started my business back in the 90s. I was working way too much. So you were in the 80s working too much. I was in the 90s working too much. And I gained a lot of weight. And next thing I know, I was 340 pounds. My daughter was just born. The doctor said, if you don't lose the weight, you're not going to see her graduate. So I took the next 6 to 7 months and I just changed the way I did everything, dietary wise, exercise wise. I went back to my normal way of doing things and lost about 130 pounds. And people always ask me how. And of course, I say discipline. There's no magic bullet. You mention it quite often. Do you attribute discipline at all to, or partially to, many of the bumps that you've had?
I don't know. I have to think about that a little bit. I think discipline somewhere it was on LinkedIn. A gentleman who'd been a guest on my podcast had a wrote something recently, and he said I'm paraphrasing him incredibly. I'm trying to remember exactly what he said, but he said that to to master change. Oh, I know. Change is a function, not a function of character, but a function of discipline.
Mm,
And I thought, wow, that's really true. If you think about it, how you set up your life in terms of discipline makes a massive difference. Like the discipline you had to lose that weight and everything, that
mm.
is incredible. That is really amazing. What was it? And I don't mean to turn this back on you, but what was it that sparked? I mean, obviously, concern about your daughter and your family, but what was it that sparked something so deep you were able to make such tremendous changes?
Well, that's just it. My daughter. Now I'm responsible for this human that I've brought in to this world. It's just not selfishly myself. And I brought myself here and I'm going to take myself out of it. I didn't blame McDonald's. I didn't blame, outside my pie hole. I didn't it was me. And now I have to live for much more than myself. I have to live for, my family. You know, um, and I always kind of viewed myself as a disciplined person, not really thought about it that way, but like you, Pat, I mean, you went to Wharton,
Hmm.
you were in the bond market right away. I mean, very, very high academic achievement. At a young age, did you consider yourself disciplined?
Back then, I wasn't as disciplined as I am now, actually.
Hmm.
I think I relied on endless youthful energy to cope with a lot of
Uh,
things. These days, though, I'm fairly disciplined, and I'm working actually on being more disciplined. I wake up at 4:45 in the morning. I am a morning person. I find 5 things to be grateful for every day, and then I meditate for half an hour. So that is how my day starts every day, and God forbid I miss a meditation session. It's like nothing feels right. It's really important to me.
mm.
I'll find time later in the day to sit down and just meditate. It's so important to me. And so there's that discipline. Lately, with getting the book out and the podcast, which, as you know, podcasts are much more demanding than people realize.
They are.
Um, I really got out of the habit of walking. I have a 3-mile loop I like to do every day and I'm feeling it. So now I'm back into integrating that back into my life and getting it established as a place I have to be. I don't think discipline is rigid or necessarily enduring. It
Mm.
takes effort and it takes sometimes some planning and a desire to do it. I mean, it would be very easy for me to sit in front of my computer and, go down a rabbit hole somewhere. But the reality is it's much better for me to get out, go walk by the lake, get exercise, which I need. You keep moving particularly as you get older, or you won't. Um, I think that that type of discipline. is really essential. And the other thing I find as a result, I think, of meditation is I have much more mental discipline
Mm,
than I ever did earlier in my life. And that is a huge benefit of meditation because you can catch yourself if you want to go off a deep end. I went off a bit of a deep end with the book, actually. I had asked, I didn't have to, but I wanted to ask for endorsements. And I was terrified, absolutely terrified to the point
wow.
I couldn't do anything for 2 or 3 days. And, I really dug into it and I realized that what was happening was I was thinking of every rejection I'd ever had in my life.
Hmm,
And I was just terrified. And it was silly because I finally got the emails out. I asked for endorsement, then I wouldn't read them for a few days. And
mm,
when I read them, it was like, wow, these are really nice. So I think that it ties into discipline, the discipline to step outside your comfort zone, the discipline to keep moving. I think that mental discipline is part of mental health, actually.
mm. Yeah, you made the point. Speaking about endorsements, I get, these testimonials from previous guests. We have this wall of love on the website, and oh my goodness, Pat, I just blush. I said, oh my, it's so flattering, and it's just, oh my goodness, um, it's very, very nice. Can we go back to your 5 points of gratitude? How is that manifested? Do you journal about them?
No, I just take some time before I meditate, and I just find 5 things to be grateful for that day.
I
Now,
see.
I do journal about things as well, but in the morning, I like to get rolling because my mind is so fresh in the morning. That's my most
Mm,
productive time.
mm,
And so if I'm up at 4:45, I'm meditating 5 to 5:30, I have the whole day ahead of me, and I
mm.
really like that.
Yeah, and getting back what you also said on discipline, oftentimes, when I ask guests what the role of discipline plays in their life, there's no wrong answer, of course, right? So, but sometimes you get a very kind of militant, you have to do this and have to do that. Whereas, you kind of said, it's just kind of providing structure, some mastery, some of the terms that you used. It's self-discipline is a whole nother area as well. It's amazing how discipline is a spectrum.
Oh, I think it is. I mean, we all have to be disciplined to do things we don't like to do sometimes.
Mm,
I think that's just life. But I think that if you look at the benefits from being disciplined, whatever that is for you, the benefits far outweigh any potential cost.
right.
I think the only cost is getting outside your comfort zone.
Yeah, continually kind of shake it up, and so I meditate as well. I generally do between 5 and 15 minutes a day. I'd like to do more. It's unassisted. Do you do assisted? Are you listening to anything? Or you just
Now, I like the quiet. I have a mantra, but I also meditate with breath, just depending on what I feel like doing on a given day. And some days I just set myself up to meditate and boom, I'm there. So,
Hmm.
I'm a little flexible about how that happens, and then there are days where, man, just nothing seems to quiet down, and
Mm.
that's okay too. It's a practice, and it's a discipline. It's not hierarchical. It's not like you get to a point and everything magically happens. It's just not like that, and I think that's part of the lesson of discipline and meditation, is that even when you don't feel like it or it's not clicking, you just have to stay and keep doing it, keep practicing.
Yeah, there's no wrong way. When I try to convince, well, I shouldn't say convince, when I tell others about it, I hear, I can't stop my brain. You mentioned monkey brain earlier. And the metaphor that I like to use is that you're on the, highways in front of you, you're on a hill and you're watching the traffic go by and your thoughts are those cars, so you're trying to separate your thoughts from yourself. But again, you don't try so hard. The more you, the more you try, the less, just kind of let it happen, and you'll get better at it.
Well, and I think there's a lot of different types of meditation. You can use
Mm.
sound as an entry into quiet. Paradoxically, you could
Mm.
walk a labyrinth. Knitting can be a meditation. Hiking
Mm.
out in nature. There are lots of different ways to find a meditation that works for you.
Yeah, I try to, I'm a golfer, and I like to walk when I play, and we play first thing in the morning. I turn the phone off, and the gentleman I play with, we barely talk. We've known each other for a long time, and it's just me out there, with the grass, I with the club, I'm hitting the ball, I'm walking, I'm just clearing my mind, I'm taking deep breaths. It's just a way, and of course, the benefits of morning sunshine are incredible as well as we're learning, well, vitamin D naturally. But it's amazing what you can really attribute to meditation.
Yeah, and I think nature is a profound source for to find peace, and that's meditation. I think people think you have to go off to some exotic resort and sit in an
Mm.
uncomfortable position and not talk to anybody for 2 weeks, and that just isn't the case. You can do that, but, personally, I would find an exotic location that was really comfortable, but, I think the profound, long-term impact of learning to discipline your mind to find quiet,
Mm.
well, I think it's life-changing personally.
Yeah, you talk about transcendental meditation as well, how that was a game changer for you. What is the difference there? What's transcendental meditation?
What it
Meditation.
fascinating. I learn TM from a gentleman who had studied with the Maharishi in Europe, and, he was just wonderful. But the essence is you get a personalized mantra, and you just repeat the mantra in your mind, and that focuses your mind on the mantra, not on all these random thoughts. Now, random thoughts will occur, and my meditation teacher said, "Broccoli. I have to put broccoli on my marketing list,"
Hmm.
as an example of these weird thoughts we all have. And I always chuckle at that. But he said, then you just let it go and you come back to your mantra and you stay there. And as you do this more and more, it becomes easier and easier.
Mm. It certainly does. And again, these are things, by the way, that don't cost anything, right?
Yeah.
That bring you such peace. It's just, we're learning that cold showers, are good for you. These are another thing that you could do for no budget, and um, you just kind of have to quiet your mind down, and many of us need that. Um, Pat Wetzel, what motivates you?
That's an interesting question. W in a two-week period, I had 3 people suggest I take this, test on a website called viacharacter.org, VIA character.org. I don't get any compensation or anything like that from them, and it's fascinating, because it looks at all your characteristics, all your strengths. There are no weaknesses, but some strengths are greater than others. And one of my strengths that I found in doing this was, an appreciation of beauty and excellence. And that blew me away. And I
Mm,
realized, oh my God, that has defined my life. I never really thought about it that way. I'm very visual. Beauty is really important to me.
mm,
And I think I inherently strive for some degree of excellence. So I would say that that is what motivates me. And also, I love people's stories. I like telling stories, and I am just blown away by the stories of my guests. They have so much wisdom that was also very motivating for me and continues to be very motivating to share that wisdom because somewhere it's gonna resonate with someone when they most need it.
well, we've got a lot in common, Pat. I tell you, my guess as well. I just the stories. I would never. I can't say never, but it would be very difficult for you and I to cross paths. I mean, we live on different sides of the country, et cetera. But we get to talk in this great setting here and share each other's stories. And hopefully anyone that's listening can benefit from it. But yeah, that motivates me as well. And beauty, I'm definitely going to check out I never even heard of it. I know all the discs and the love languages and the Briars Miggs or I didn't say that right. You know what I
Myers-Briggs?
Myers-Briggs,
Briggs,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
But via character.org, I'll definitely take a look at that. How do you define success given that motivation?
If the outside world were to look at me today, they would say I'm not successful. I don't have the title and this and that, but I have lots of adventures.
Mm.
And I think success is very, very individual. I think it has to do with some personal contentment, and I think it has to do with pursuing things that really move and touch you. I think that's the ultimate success, actually.
Yeah, the outside perception, who cares? Right? I mean, what you feel inside, success. Um, there's never a wrong answer to that question, of course, and it could change tomorrow, depending on circumstances. But that's wonderfully put together. Put together, Pat. Do you often think about that? About, am I successful?
Not at all, actually.
I don't
I
either.
think that I like what I'm doing.
Mm,
I have and it's often in flux. I mean, I'm just now moving everything into YouTube, which has been a wonderful move.
mm,
Um, I'm looking at the next book. I'm looking at putting together a keynote speech. So it's always evolving and changing. And actually, that's one of the things I really enjoy is, you master things. You get to one level, and now what do I do? And
mm.
there's no roadmap here. You got to figure it out. But you add a next layer of things. It's like now that's integrated into your routine, and it just keeps continuing. And I think the fact that one can continue to learn and to master new skills and to reach further is a wonderful opportunity.
It certainly is. Well, Pat, you inspire me. You what you do now. The podcast it's over like 3 years now, right? Or is it 4?
Yeah, no, we're going into our 4th year. It's on obviously all major podcast platforms. The website bumpintheroad.us is a great place to start. Um, it's not hard to find.
Not hard to find at all. And you've got great guests, and you get out of the way and you let them tell their story. And it's just some of them that I've listened to. It's just like you just can't. You just there's amazing, inspirational people out there, Pat, and you're one of them, by the way.
Well, you're very kind, and I can say right back at you.
Thank you very much. I'm working on taking compliments. I'll get better at it, Pat. Thank you. Thank you very much. I so appreciate your time. So we can get in touch with you. Bump in the Road is really, you're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, or X, YouTube, Substack.
Yep, just about everywhere. Bumpintheroad.us is the website, and that's probably the most central place to start because I think
Mm,
that one of the reasons for the website is to provide pictures and videos and things that you can't provide through a podcast.
mm. And then from there, you can get the book, and you're working on your sec. What is your process for writing, by the way?
Uh, Interesting. The first book, I integrated some flying stories that had wisdom in them. So each chapter is focused more or less around an idea, like maybe it's nature or something like that. After this first book, I'm not planning on telling any personal stories, and I'm actually working on the structure of that book now because I want it to carry through the future books. So the next book, Bump in the Road Strong Women, I want that structure to carry through for say Bump in the Road Business.
Hmm.
And it's just taking a little thought. I'm beginning to really get into it now. The book came out in September, and as when you get a book out, there's just so much that has to be done. And the audiobook will be out shortly. So now I'm finally in a space where I can start thinking about what's next and how do I do it.
Very inspirational, Pat. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. We'll make sure we put everything in the show notes that you talked about. If I'm ever there in the greater Southwest, we'll get together and have a cup of
Absolutely.
tea.
That sounds great. Thank you very much. This is fun. And I just love your podcast. Thank you very much.
Thank you. You be well, Pat.
You too.
Thank you for listening and or viewing Joey Pinz Disciple Conversations. Please share this episode with one or two of your friends who you think may benefit from the episode. Our website, www.joeypins.com. There you'll find lots of resources, and you could join our mailing list. Please follow us on all our social media, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. podcast information. The video version of our podcast is on YouTube. Please subscribe. Audio is on all major podcasting platforms. Please follow them. And if you like it, please consider giving 5-star rating. Would really appreciate that. Would you like to financially support the podcast? You can go to our Patreon site. Consider $5, $10, or $20 a month. There's all kind of plans that we have there. There's like a one-time payment. What is this podcast episode worth to you? $25, $50, $100, $500, $1,000, $5,000. You be the judge. You can go to our PayPal account to do that as well. Thank you again for listening or watching Joey Pinz Disciple Conversations.